Hello all and welcome back to ATO After the Whistle, Capital City Supporters Group's podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Thomas Stockton, and I'm coming to you on a dreary, cold Monday evening, just before I actually head out to the cinema this evening with my lovely better half. But before we must do that, we need to go through this cathartic experience that all of us have come to know so well after picking up far fewer points than games we have played this season, coming off the defeat of coming off a pretty heavy defeat against the best team in the league, albeit. And we're gonna get into that conversation a little bit, because I do think that Forge, despite where they are in the table, I think they are the best team in the league, and their statistics and their squad depth is definitely backs that up as well. So yeah, it was a painful one. It was a dreary one at TD Place. There was the drizzle. There was not as many people in the stands. It was a difficult Sunday afternoon that has led to a little bit of a flat Monday. But Johnny MacArthur is here joining me as usual to dissect all of this. Johnny, it is Monday. How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right. I'm just good. I don't know, man. I'm doing okay, I guess. Yesterday you're right, it was a little disheartening for multiple reasons, but I mean, did you guys have fun yesterday? Even though it was a little dreary and, there wasn't as many people there, it still sounded nice.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the I'm going to call the big guns, and they're going to absolutely love it. I'm calling them the big guns from Capital City Supporters Group. You got Brandon, you got Eddie, you got Dan. These guys weren't there yesterday, and so we didn't have anyone particularly down at the front. The Bytown boys kind of led that stuff from the front yesterday. I did have the opportunity to go down and do that at the front, but I personally, I'm normally in row 13 in the dub, and I particularly enjoy going up there because a lot of people who just pop in for the one game in their groups of friends kind of sit a little bit higher up anyway. Yeah. And I almost feel like the inclusions officer.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, bring the chance up at that area of the dub and get them going. And tell you what, it was $5 beers. I had beer and some food with a friend beforehand at a pub lunch. All in all, I actually really enjoyed myself at the game. I had a really good time. When the weather's crap and the team is not performing particularly well, you gotta make your own happiness. And I was just refused to get caught down in the dumps of everything is sad and depressing and terrible, and just went, you know what, I'm going to drink my beer and I'm going to sing and I'm going to dance and I'm going to have a good time. Eddie will be very proud and very happy to know that his Oh Hamilton song, I sung it loud and I sung it proud, and I made a lot of people laugh about it as well, which was good. I actually had two different groups of people come up to me at the end of the game and said that I made their experience really fun and it's made them want to come back as well. So in the long-winded answer to your question, Johnny, I actually had a bloody good time, and it wasn't until I watched the game back this morning that I was a little bit oh, that's what happened on the pitch.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And the fact that you managed to convince people to come back again after a game like that it's some stellar stuff. Stellar work.
To give us just some short fire feelings of that, having watched the broadcast at home, because it's a fundamentally different experience, as you know, seeing it in the stands. I always feel more positive about what I've seen on the pitch than if I've watched it live than if I've watched it on the broadcast. You're analysing a bit more of the wider picture on the broadcast, whereas when you're down in the stadium, you're focusing a little bit more on the intricate one-on-one battles, especially the players who are a little bit closer to you. So Johnny, just to give us a little overall feeling, what did you make of yesterday's game?
Well, I feel like it sucks to say, but I mean, it was, Forge fans would say that was a routine Forge win, and it really was. I mean, other than, we didn't really start to get threatening their goal until I think the last 20 minutes of the game or so, where we had a few close calls. But other than that, it was basically just pure domination in the way that Forge is, really known to do. I mean, they're such a well-drilled team. They just dominate. And that they did that to us, absolutely no let up whatsoever in our own barn. Pretty much no, we came to get 3 points and we're just going to do it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Absolutely. And I think there's some real overriding feelings and themes that really came out of yesterday's game. And the first one that I want to touch on, in as much as we like to do some, we like to chat shit and analyze in our own way in this podcast, but one of the things I really like to look at here is attitude.
Yeah.
It was very poignant in the second half, and every single Atletico Ottawa fan, if you ask them a question today how they felt about the team, one of the first words that's going to come up is attitude. The body language in the second half was diabolical. I understand it's a dreary day. It's not fun. You shit a couple of goals from mistakes by that point. But towards the end of that game, just it was slumped. Everyone was deflated. Again, understandably, it's just history repeating itself. I get it. We're late in the season. It's not going very well and it's frustrating. But yeah, as I said, that body language in the second half, for me, there was just a real lack of cohesiveness in this team. Just no synergy in the slightest. And again, understandably frustrated at this, but with 6 games still to go, Johnny, what needs to be done here? Who does it need to come from? Is it the 11 players on the pitch? Is it the 8 substitutes that could come on and make an impact? Or does it come from the brass? Does it come from AJ? Does it come from Mista? Does it come from Fernando higher above? Because at the moment, there just looks to be an incredible disconnection between every single element of this team. And it was emphasized so clearly by the fact that when Forge were in possession, our pressing game was non-existent.
No.
Forge were energetic. They were on the front foot. They closed us down at every single opportunity. And we will dive into that analysis element a little bit later on and how that affected the game. But just looking at us, regardless of the impact our pressing had or non-pressing had, the fact that it just felt like no one cared. So, Johnny, tell me what you thought, and if there is an attitude issue, no one cared. Of course they cared. It was a difficult one to watch and to look at, where when we sat in that low block at a goal down, and you've got the guys and they're not busting a gut to get in and close down the space. So where does that come from? Is that a tactical thing? Is that the fact that it's just to be expected this late on in the season? Because the last 4 or 5 games have been better than that. Yesterday just felt like a bit of an anomaly.
I think it's hard to rule out the fact that it could be a tactical thing. I mean, we more or less play almost the same way every game. And, it seems to work against Cavalry for some reason, but that's about it. And then everyone else, they've got to figure it out. And then they play to our weaknesses. I mean, they'll play to the flanks that we're weak on. They'll take advantage of our low block and, have 3/4 of their passes in our half, just work us down and take advantage of a mistake because they know we don't have a lot of cohesion. So even though our philosophy is definitely meant to be defensive, we don't seem to have the cohesion to actually pull it off. So, I mean, yeah, of course there's an attitude thing. I mean, you probably notice it more when you're there than watching on the broadcast. You see more of the body language, and I heard people saying that there was some players yelling at each other. That's stuff that I don't pick up on the broadcast.
Yeah.
And there's got to be. I mean, our next game is against, I think it's York.
Yeah, on Friday evening.
Our next game on Friday evening against York, if we lose, we are mathematically eliminated from a playoff spot.
I like that you're still even mentioning playoff spot on this podcast, Johnny.
See,
I thought I was going to try and be the optimistic one.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I did say weeks ago on this podcast that we probably weren't making playoffs. And, I always knew that. But the thing is that the players, obviously, they toe the line and they say, we're not eliminated until we're mathematically eliminated. And, bless them, that's the right attitude to take. And if they took a different attitude, we'd all be pretty fucking pissed. But, Friday at the soonest, we could be completely mathematically eliminated from playoffs. And that gives us 5 more games with literally nothing to play for. So, the players probably know that. They probably feel that. They're like, what's the point for the rest of the season? It's a wash. Am I really going to put in that extra 110% for nothing? We don't have relegation. There's no relegation to try and battle against. There's literally nothing anymore to play for other than to maybe be spoilers to other teams. So it's hard if you don't have a huge leadership system to pull everybody up with them, it's really, really hard for a group like that to stand behind any sort of idea. You know?
But surely as a professional organization, especially in something like the sporting industry, which is incredibly competitive, and sports people are just like, they're nuts to begin with, right? You don't become a sports person by coasting by at getting 70%. You're the kind of person who is always actively wanting to be better than other people. That's how you become a professional athlete to begin with. And as much as I understand your point there, Johnny, and you make a very relevant point about not really having anything left to play for, there has to be a way to have internal sense of motivation. Now, does that have to come from the individuals? Does it have to come from more leadership in the team? Or again, like the question I posed earlier, does it come from the brass? Is this something Mister's not doing a good enough job at encouraging people to feel a certain way? Fernando, let's go higher up. Let's look at the hierarchy. Is there a disconnection there? Are a lot of these players saying, well, this Atletico Ottawa project, this Madrid project clearly doesn't see me in the plans for next year, so I'm kind of mentally checking out already. And as soon as you get a few players checking out like that, surely that's going to affect the whole team. Now, I don't know if anyone is checking out like that already, but where would you hope that kind of thing, where would you hope that kind of motivation comes from?
Well, it has to
see it from.
It has to be a club culture thing, like you say, because as an athlete, obviously, you are, as a professional athlete, you're probably more competitive than most people on the planet. That's just what you are, and that's what you chose as your profession. So yeah, I have no doubt that individually, all of these men are still, extremely competitive. But the thing is that if you don't have a culture that has you all fighting for the same goal, then you're just a bunch of individuals out there. And that is a lot of what we looked like yesterday, was a bunch of individuals. And I don't care how motivated you are, if you're not playing together under a philosophy, under a banner, under a manager that you really believe in, or an idea you really believe in, then it's useless.
And now, do you think that's the wrong manager for the system or the wrong players for the manager?
I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're still in year one. I think I'm going to give it until, halfway through next season, maybe we'll be like, okay, if Mista couldn't do it in the asterisk first season, this season I'm going to look at this season as kind of an abject failure. Like, this season was an abject failure. As much as I don't want to say that to like the players, because they ran their socks off multiple times a week for a couple of months. I mean, and the thing is that I honestly think that the higher ups probably let them down. Like, you can see how much they hate losing and how much they hate conceding goals, because they're trying so goddamn hard, and you can only do so much when you're the player, right? So we'll know this off season is going to be huge to see what kind of moves that we make. Do we care about results? Does this experiment, does it care about results, or is it about finding young Canadian players to bring overseas? Is it about giving their young players minutes over here against grown men? Is it about giving Mista some experience in a smaller league overseas, sort of out of the watchful eye of like other European clubs? Like, do they covet the North Star Shield? Sometimes I doubt that.
Yeah, which is why, and again, we've questioned this before, maybe this team needs a bigger core group of experienced Canadian Premier League players. Johnny, we spoke a little bit about Mista there. How do you feel about coaches calling out their players? Because that is essentially what Mista did. And before you answer, I'm just going to roll a little clip here.
I don't know, because we planning one game, but when the guys that are inside, we didn't do anything. We work the last couple of days. We are not ready with the ball. We are not fighting with the ball. We don't want second ball. I think today Ford deserved the victory, the 3 point, because when we are not humble, when we thought we are something or someone, and when we don't work like a final, we are a very normal team, and today we saw our reality in this game.
So there we have Mista essentially saying they didn't do anything that they had planned to do on the training pitch, before this game, which is a very bold statement from your manager to come
That's
out
pretty
and say.
intense, yeah.
And later in that press conference, he goes on to talk about the fact that the team had a lack of energy, and he felt like they essentially went out onto the pitch with their heads down. Now, Johnny, is that overly harsh? Is it someone just spatting true talk, just like unadulterated truth? And how do you feel about managers essentially coming out and going, I don't know what went wrong. I told them to do things and they didn't do it.
It's funny because that first line is like, that's such a Mourinho thing to say. Like, we practiced a bunch of stuff and they didn't do it. What do you want me to say? Like, and you know, you can say things like that when you have a track record like Mourinho does. But at this time in our season, does that help? Does it help? And I mean, especially we talked, you know, but like they went out onto the pitch with their heads already down. It's like, okay, whose fault is that? As we said, like they're individually going to be motivated enough to perform, whether it's to keep a spot on this team or whether it's to, you know, attract eyes from other teams as well. So if you say that they have their heads down going out there, like why didn't you lift their heads up?
That's a super interesting point, because he does mention in the press conference, as he mentioned over the last 2 or 3 games, that the past 4 or 5 games there has been a better mental attitude. We saw that in the defensive fortitude against Pacific. We saw that in the triumphant victory against Cavalry.
Yeah.
You know, look, were these best performances in the world? No, but these were players that were fighting for each other. These were players that had smiles on their faces. Even in the defeat to Halifax, they still came over. There was still an element of camaraderie. So if there was a change, if he is specifically saying that this one game in particular, his players didn't do what he asked them to do and they came into the game with their heads down, and like he goes on to say, I don't know, I'm going to have to talk to my boys to find out what happened. I wonder if anything happened like the day before. We know there's been talks earlier on in the season. It weren't so much crisis talks, but we know there were talks between the brass and the players about performance levels. Is this something that happened maybe the day before and everyone was just like off? Because I think like going into it, and we're going to come on to this here because Chris Manella actually was in the press conference straight after, and he had a slightly different take. And he was saying that he thought the 3-0 result, was harsh for how the team played. So, Johnny, I'm just going to give you a platform here in a second to take us through some of the statistics to see whether our overriding feeling of like, that wasn't great, or was Manella's view that the 3-0 scoreline was a little bit harsh. But I just wonder, was there something that was said? Was there something that really put them off? Because I actually felt personally in the first 20 minutes of that game, apart from the calamitous defensive error / brilliant piece of individual skill by Chouanier to give them the lead within 7 minutes, which is already an incredibly monumentous task against a team like Forge, to be able to have to come back from a goal down 7 minutes in. But I thought we didn't actually start that game too badly, which is why I was so surprised to hear Meester come out and say that he felt like the boys had their heads down from the off, because I actually don't agree with that.
No,
I think
you know what? So I'm just going to butt in because now that I'm thinking about it, it's making me really upset, this quote, because you're absolutely right. At the beginning of this game, we didn't look dejected. And he could instead have pointed out things like, you know, we had Jean-Claude Lawson come off with an injury early. We had Brian Wright almost have an injury. We had to change the game plan really early in the game. You could easily have pointed at that and been like, listen, we had a game plan. It kind of went out the window a little earlier and we had to improvise and we had to adapt. And that's what happened. That's where it fell apart. And, you know, that's a very valid thing to say. We'd be like, okay, I get it. I saw the same thing. You made 2 other changes at halftime. Of course you had to adapt just to an unforeseen circumstance. But to go ahead and say that the boys were already heads down walking out onto the pitch, I don't like that.
Yeah, and there's a moment where, as we say, where you go a goal down and it's just a little bit of history repeating itself, and you can understand that's harsh on the morale of these players who are under the cosh. They are like, the mental strain that comes with an unsuccessful team is just what the kind of pressure. It's just something that most of us in our day-to-day lives never experience.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible amount of pressure. And as you say, like Jean-Claude Lawson playing up front in a 4 that had Telfer, Shaw, and Nunez, which had Shaw a little bit more central. I was so excited to see that. Lawson playing off as like, he was literally not even playing as a 10, he was playing as a false 9. It was a little bit different. There was an incredible amount of fluidity in those first I'm going to say 15 minutes because
Yeah.
then Lawson picked up that knock. But I thought we started the game well, and then we had to change off the way we were playing because we brought Wright on, which completely changed the game plan at that point because you've got a different set of personnel on the field.
Exactly.
So but going back to Chris's quote, which was that he felt that the 3-0 scoreline was a little bit harsh. Run us through some of these stats here, then, Jay. Tell me, based on what you're seeing on paper, is there any truth to what Chris was saying?
So, I guess there's maybe a kernel of truth to it because Forge scored 3 off of an XG of 1.3. So they overperformed their XG by double. Our XG was 0.27. We 3. Maybe you say that the score line the scoreline flatters Forge, if that's how you want to put it, but we still look like a game that we lost. Whether we lost 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, at the end of the day, it doesn't really fucking matter, does it?
Yeah, and this is the other thing. Like, I think in a game like this, the scoreline is utterly irrelevant. It's a defeat,
exactly.
A draw, or a win. And when we classify it under an L, a loss, a D, a defeat, what you want to call it, then it comes down to the performance. And regardless of that, the performance wasn't up to par. We said beforehand, the Forge high press was something we really struggled to deal with. Manella's not wrong. Chris isn't wrong when he says that we did manage to play through it. A couple of times, there were some times where there was that risky ball into McKendry from the goalkeeper that allowed us to spring an attack. But I think our passes were inaccurate. Yeah. We were constantly offside. Mm-hmm. And from the stands, you're like, there's no way that this linesman is getting every one of these calls right. And you watch the game back, you're like, we're like a yard offside.
I was the same thing watching it at home. I was like, what the hell? Some of these got to be wrong calls. And then, you watch it back, and he is at least a yard offside every single time. 6 offsides we had yesterday, 6 of them. It's almost like the Forge were like, the older brother when you hold your little brother's head and he's like swinging at nothing because he can't reach you. That was them essentially just watching us just shoot ourselves in the foot and just tire ourselves out and make the mistakes.
And that's some of the most frustrating elements for me in terms of like and again, let's classify this here. You talk about the 11 on the pitch there. It's just a little bit like timing of runs, whether you practice out in the training field or it's a natural instinct to be offside every single time. And there's a few of them, like the player on the ball physically could not play that pass quicker. There was one I remember that was in behind for Wright by Becky in the first half. A little chip through ball. He plays that ball first time.
Yeah,
Becky
absolutely.
Physically can't. But again, this is my point. Even if Wright is onside there, that ball's overhit. And I found there was just this consistent rhetoric yesterday of offside runs and overhit passes. And I was just like, there was something missing yesterday. And this is not down to do with the quality of the players or I think our players can't pass. Of course not. We have seen the bags and bags of potential that starting 11 and the boys on the bench have. It was off yesterday, and it was really frustrating. One of the other things that I found on a tactical side, and I think this comes down to more of a managerial thing, Ford started with a 4 at the back, but then rapidly changed to 3 at the back, especially when they were in possession. What that created was an excess overload with the wing backs, which meant Verhoeven and Costa were having to deal with, I can't remember how you say his name, Sabak?
Yeah.
Sabak on the left and Chouanier on the right.
Yeah.
And they were consistent. And by the way, it was very good wing play from them. Both of them hugged the chalk all game, which was stretching us.
They're class.
They were overlapping us there, and then just when you think you've come out to get them, they make the run in the inside channel between the fullback and the centre back, and that is one of the biggest dangers of playing essentially what I'm going to call a 4-4-2, 4-3-3, whatever it is, versus a back 5. Yeah. It's something that if you watch Premier League football, it's something that Brighton absolutely destroyed Arsenal with at the weekend, and it was by complete grace and fortune and some good goalkeeping that Arsenal didn't lose that game. And it was similar when I was watching this game. I was like, this is a back 3 with wing backs that are just taking us apart. Then Sabak would join in with Borges in a 10 position, and then that would overload us in the midfield. And then The striker would come and drop short. That would drag Becky out, which is instantly how he conceded the first goal. The striker comes out, passes comes out, and he wins that header and flicks that on. Becky's now dragged out of position. Chouanière has made the smart inside run. He's now on the wrong side of Acosta. He's one-on-one against Arnone, come running into the box. And that is regardless of defending, man. Like, that is not a position as a centre-back you want to be, having a tricky winger turning you inside out inside the box.
Just skinning him.
Nothing to do with the defensive qualities of the boy there. That is nothing to do with that. That is, again, it was just these events that occurred, and I just found it really frustrating from a tactical point of view that we just didn't seem to address this.
Yeah,
all game.
Yeah. It's the thing is that I mean, obviously the assistant was covering today, but I mean they have a culture there of excellence, and obviously Bobby Smirniotis is an excellent tactician. And a game like that, when we say we were defeated handily, a lot of that can come down to the tactics. And the annoying thing is, like you mentioned, they switch from a back four to a back three, whether they're attacking or whether they're defending. The annoying thing is that Madrid does that too. Simeone does that too. Why aren't we? If we're supposed to be following the culture of this parent club, why are we not also doing these subtly clever switches in phase, switches in formation? I mean, back three is really hot right now. A lot of people are doing it because of the reasons that you mentioned, especially, and you know what else? Being really fluid is hot right now too. So being able to switch formations based on the attacking phase or the defending phase.
It's something if you've been watching, if anyone's been following the Canadian men's national team recently, it's one of the things that Herman's actually sometimes accused of doing too much, is overthinking it and changing it too much inside the game. But it is such a consistent thing at the moment with the 2021 managers, is that ability to change up in the game, exactly as you said. Yeah. When I was speaking earlier about attitude and my frustration with the lack of pressing, like, we understand that Forge are a team that keep the ball. When the last time they came to TD Place and they beat us 1-0, they dominated possession all game, and we understood that. But when a team is going to dominate possession all game, I don't need my team to have many chances. I just need my team to be able to counter properly. And if you're going to set your team up to soak up the pressure of the possession-based team, you've got to set them up to counter. And if you're going to set them up to counter, your fastest players like Zach Verhoeven shouldn't be playing right back. Yeah. I'm sorry, but you got to set up to counter. This team was never set up for a counter attack.
No, it's honestly, it's dumb. Like, we play a low block, but we're not lethal on the counter. It's like, what are we doing? What is our identity? What's the plan here? The amount of times we've seen the ball get a nice long ball up the side, and then either Shaw, when he was playing on the wing, or Verhoeven goes and gets to it, and then there's no one inside to cross it to. There's no one to pass it to. It's like, okay, what are we doing? And you know what? I'm also going to say that I think Ian Hume is probably one of the best color commentators on One Soccer, because all of these issues, he was talking about them the entire game, and not in them, was he? And not in like an annoying way, but in just a very matter of fact, this is the problem with this team. And I really think that our coaching team should watch that broadcast back, and then obviously they know what the problems are, but I mean, listen to someone from the outside tell you what the problems with your team are, because he got just about everything spot on. Possession without purpose, no threat on the counterattack. I mean, we had 47% possession. We had a lot. That's a lot of possession with only 2 shots on target. We're giving the ball away, but we're getting a lot, but we never looked threatening when we had it. Versus, like you were saying, when Forge have it, they can string passes together like no one's business.
Yeah, and I found it was lovely to see Mista finally do some substitutions before the 85th minute, but those 2 at half-time, I didn't quite understand them as a purpose for the game. Nunez has an issue in the sense that he is incredibly one-dimensional. He gets down the left wing and he cuts inside. Yeah. He had a brief cameo a couple games ago where he came on the right wing, and all he did was essentially get to the byline and put balls in the box. Yeah. And I was like, this is so much more productive than you're cutting inside on the left-hand side. And and in all fairness to him, I thought it was so harsh that he got substituted at halftime, because defensively as well as running forward, he was probably one of our better performers in that first half. Again, he was just too one-dimensional, too predictable, and therefore not clinical in the slightest. But I thought it was very harsh to bring him off at halftime. And Alberto Soto had no influence in that second half.
No. Nunez works his ass off every game, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned how in another game he looked better when he was on the right, because I had that idea yesterday that Telford looked so much better when he was on the left.
That's a point I was about to get onto. Please elaborate with that.
Because the thing is, if you're playing like the 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1, whatever you want to call it, 4-2-3-1, I'm just gonna say they're all basically the same thing with small differences in it. If you're going to play like this and not a 4-3-3, then it behooves you to have your wingers not be inverted. Because you have two strikers up top, you have two midfielders behind them. You don't necessarily need to be cutting in. What you need to be doing is running to the byline and putting balls in.
Or if the ball comes to you in the box, you can just lash a shot and not have to take that touch to move
exactly.
it.
You don't have to cut in.
Yeah, like it's really interesting that you bring that up independently, Johnny, because this is actually one of the big asterisks I have on my notes for this podcast today was left-footed left side. And we had Nunez as a right footer. We have Acosta as a right footer. And then when you come to our pivot in the midfield, you had McKendry and Shaw, both right footers.
Yeah.
You had Lawson before he came off playing in the pocket, right footer. One of the big things you need one of your central midfielders in that kind of formation to be able to be left footed. Why? So that they can play you an outswinging pass onto the left wing that a player can take in their stride, rather than an in-swinging pass every time that stops the stride and immediately slows down the attack.
Ruins momentum, yeah.
And then when you've got Acosta, who's constantly having to come back on his right foot, and Nunez, who's constantly have to come on his right foot again, that left-hand side is so slow. When we talk about possession without purpose, I don't even think it was possession without purpose. I think there's purpose, but I think the team is set up in a way where that purpose is nullified.
Yeah, and this is when now this is when we can bring the conversation to, are the tactics letting these boys down? And when we look at these subtleties like you just mentioned, a lot of people don't think about that. Oh, if you have a left-footed player, especially with like your center backs, the left-footed center back on the left time when you're playing a ball out, if you have the ball going in the direction that the runner is going to be running in, it helps your momentum a whole lot more than if it's going to be outswinging, and it basically they have to knock it down and then bring it up. It's these little details that I'm not sure if we're considering.
And this is where there's a whole other conversation to be had about the fact that although we had a longer off season, although we had more time to prep this squad this year, this is nothing against the players, and it might not even be anything against the formation. Maybe the team, the players we have at our disposal right now just doesn't lend to being a balanced squad. Many professional soccer teams out there have incredibly talented players, but then you go lose 2-0 to Rennes. Why?
Yeah.
Because playing Mbappe, Neymar, Messi and Di Maria in a side is unbalanced.
Yeah.
So balance is such an important aspect, and I haven't really heard any of the pundits at CanPL, One Soccer, or anyone really talking about this. We know that there are players in this team that maybe are better than other players, but maybe we just need to put the player who is the best for each position there, like naturally, and just try and balance the team. And you know what? If that's an average team, but it's balanced and we're playing all right football and we're losing, if we're losing to Forge 3-0 every week, but we're playing football that makes sense, I'm like, at least I'm having a blast. At least I'm watching it. But what I don't want to watch is to get hammered by teams hammered by a team every two or three games, and then grind out a draw and maybe pick up a victory, which, as we know and we said on the other podcast, that we made the most of the mistakes that Cavalry made. We made the most of the opportunities that we gained for ourselves, but the Cavalry gave us as well in that game. But it wasn't by any means a performance for the ages. And I think it is like very much getting to that point when the fans at the moment are crying out for identity. It's like, where, as you say, where is the identity? And I think maybe you and I might have just unearthed a little gem there in terms of the elephant in the room that's super obvious. It's the balance of the time, the balance of the tide, balance of the team part of it.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, we have a great group of players. Individually, our roster is quite good, and that was why everyone was really hyped coming into the season. It's like, man, we got pretty good players in just about every position on the pitch. But having a bunch of great players on paper means fuck all if you're not using them properly and you're not having a system that plays to their strengths.
Yeah, But on a positive, mate, we didn't give up a penalty.
We didn't give up a penalty, and we didn't get a yellow card.
Also, actually, can we just take a second for all the times I talk absolute smack? Mr. Rudolph yesterday had a quality officiating performance. He was lenient. He let things go. The only time he brought out his yellow card was to yellow card Babuli for being a bit of a dick.
Oh my God, that pissed me off so much. If I was at the stadium, I would have given him a fucking earful. Oh my goodness. Listen, bud, that ball was out of bounds, and then to kick it, and then to actually kick it in, and then kick off about it, and then be pissed off. I mean, honestly, if I was on the pitch, I probably, like, if I was one of the players, you know, that's a crowd the player moment, man. To friggin' boot it at the keeper after the whistle when you're already 3-0 up. Like, that's a huge, like, fuck you, bro, type of moment. Like, get the fuck out of here. I would say, I mean, I asked my fiance at the broadcast last night. I threw a lot more F-bombs than this when I was watching it.
Yeah, this podcast definitely went to being from PG-13 to R-rated over the last couple of weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But, like, so really, just to sort of sum that all up for me, this is just the story of Atletico Ottawa so far. We're very close to being decent. We're missing that, like, that one spark of real quality. As I said, like, the offsides are frustrating, but then even if the players were onside, most of those passes were overhit yesterday. Verhoeven had a very hard-working performance, for example, but a lot of misplaced passes.
Yeah.
We are lacking quality in the final third. Players are feeling frustrated with each other. So yeah, look, we've got a lot of decent players, but I think balance is one of the core things to take away. How are you feeling though? After 22 games, there's 6 games to go, Johnny. What do you want to see from this side? And none of the like, get as many points as possible. I'm doing like micro analysis here. Like, what are the small things when you're going to be watching these games now you want to start seeing?
What I want to start seeing is when we go on the counter, I want to actually look threatening off of it. That's one of the biggest things that I want to do. It's been a few games in a row now that we play the long ball and then someone picks up on it and then you get excited. You're like, oh, we're going on the counter, you know, it's going to be a chance. And then you see them get up there and there's no one to pass to. I want to see us stop giving the ball away in the midfield with misplaced passes. Then this is a cohesion thing, obviously, that we were talking about before. The amount of times that we give the ball away in the midfield because of a misplaced pass is absolutely infuriating. It's these little things that I want to see worked on and sort of zeroed in on and perfected, and I want evidence that the coaching team, you know, has this attention to detail to try and fix these little things. I don't want to see 2 right-footed players playing on the left talking about more attention to details, things like this. I want to tweak the system in a way that works. I don't care if we lose every game for the rest of the season, but I want us to play some good football while doing it.
Thank you. That is for me the biggest preach to the choir here, and it was no more emphasized than yesterday with Mister's gun ho, throw everything, kitchen sink as well as the toiletries underneath it at the bloody wall, because bringing off a central defense, bringing off like Arnone in a centre back to bring on Coupland, but then to drop Ben McKendry, our most composed central midfielder, into a centre back position where you essentially nullify his impact on the game. It's just like what you're scrambling for goals and attempts at points here. Surely points can't be the goal anymore. Surely it's about like getting a team on the field that can play together and actually starts putting in a performance together, because all of these players individually are more than good enough to play for Atletico Ottawa.
Exactly.
And tactics is one thing, but you just have the right set of players on the field that balance things out. Not everyone loves Neufville, but you know what? I like a left-footed left back.
Yep.
And he's young. He's got a lot of raw talent, especially going forward. He makes silly mistakes from time to time, but you know what? You know how you learn? You learn from the mistakes, man.
Yeah.
And like to see someone like Neufville just benched after giving away a penalty against Halifax, I'm like, no, actually, I want to see Neufville come onto the field again and be put up against Chouanière and not bring him down in the way he brought down Ben, because then I've seen growth from this player.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, we're rambling on about that a little bit.
Well, you get annoyed, right? It's like, why not play in a game like this? Why not play Neufville on the left back, throw Acosta over the right back where he belongs, put someone like Nunez or Verhoeven on the right wing, throw Telfer on the left wing. I mean, I'm hoping that after switching Telfer on the left yesterday, we might have had a eureka moment and we're like, huh, this is the better way to do it.
Yeah, and like, look, we don't have a left-footed central midfielder, so I get that unless you're going to drop Soto back in there. But yeah, I mean, I would love to just see a front three of whether it be Shaw or Wright down the middle, a right footer on the right, a left footer on the left, a left footer at left back, and a right footer at right back.
It's basic stuff, man. If like we're playing a 4-4-2, why not do it the old school way? You know, do it properly. There's a way to do this system, and the way that we're currently doing it is not the way to do it.
And to take away from all of that, that is obviously our rant about this game. And I just don't think there's much more, because I could go on and tell you about all the individual goals that were scored against us, and tell you about the individual mistakes about all of that. But that's not really what it comes down to. The third goal is irrelevant at that point. Coupland's dispossessed, and we're playing with one defender on the field at that point. So guess what? Gaping holes in the defense.
Yeah.
The second goal was, bless his heart, but a very poor goalkeeping error. It was just an error in judgment. But then there's the frustration in the corner just before Unknown takes a head injury, and then the referee doesn't let him join back in the box to defend the corner. So we're a defender light in the box as well. So look, frustrations here, frustrations there. I just agree with you, Johnny. I think going back to basics, the one compliment I will give was that TD Place was again a fantastic experience. They had the $5 poutines, the $5 mystery bags. I won myself an official match ball.
That's cool as hell, man. That's awesome.
Keep an eye out on CCSG channels coming up. It might be a gift for people who sign up at some point. It might be auctioned off for charity, but a Canadian Premier League official match ball, and we might even have a few player signatures on there coming up.
Okay.
And then the $5 Budweisers has led to a great announcement, and the staff there in general just cracking people again. So the football can be a little bit frustrating, but I'm also a British football fan, and if you're not moaning about the football, then I'm moaning about politics, and that's just sad.
Well, there you go. The thing is they really put a lot of work into a really good match day experience for the people that go, and
it is, by the way, and it is like it
is a great match day experience with everything that they do, and they step it up every single time. And I honestly, if we can talk as much about the football, we can talk as much about the spirit in the dressing room as we want. One thing that this organization has got absolutely right so far is the match day experience and what they offer to people that come to games.
Absolutely. And to tell you, as I said at the start of this podcast, if I can have 8 people who don't really follow football that much come up to me at the end of this game and say that like we put on enough of a show there that it's made them want to come back, like I've done my job, and I went home happy. I went home with a smile on my face.
There you go. You feel a whole lot better after a game like that. Because as a fan, I mean, what is it really all about? We love to moan about the football and talk about the tactics and the stats and be like, I think we should do this. But I mean, when I go to the football and I get to hang out with my friend Thomas, and I get to bring my fiance with me, and I get to drink some beer and sing some songs and yell and clap my hands, that's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of all of this.
Absolutely. So there we go. Johnny has just sold it for you better than I ever could. If you want to come join us in the dub at TD Place, don't hesitate. Only 2 games left this season. Grab your tickets for them as soon as you can. And guess what? The day before our final home game, Canada women national team is playing against New Zealand at TD Place 2. Make sure you go on and look at the tickets. Go on sale, I believe, tomorrow, 5th of November. So make sure, October. I'm wishing time away there, Johnny. But if you want to come sit in the dub, make sure you use the code CCSG to get yourself a cheeky little discount. All we ask is that you stand on your feet, you sing a song, you clap your hands, and you get involved with us. And of course, we have our Golden Scarf Award for the Capital City Player of the Season. You've seen trophies here and there that go in boxes and no one talks about, but everyone loves a good scarf in football. So the Golden Scarf Award, head to capitalcitysupporters.com/golden scarf. Go and find the competition, enter the player that you think should win, and the scarf will be awarded to the Capital City Supporters Group Player of the Season at our final home game. And I'm going to be seeing you there, Johnny, am I not?
Yes. The plan is to be at the last one against York, I think it is.
I believe so, yeah.
I would love nothing more than to have some cheeky little situation where we beat York at home and they don't make the playoffs or something like that. I don't know. Just something to really give the last few games some sting against someone else.
Matey, if we beat York and they don't make it into the playoff, then every single Halifax fan has to come and thank us for their playoff spot, because the number of times they've beaten us and then we beat York as well. Like, there is no such thing as a rivalry between Ottawa and Halifax anymore. Like, Halifax owe us big time.
Yeah, if we could pull something off like that. And you know what? I would love to see nothing more, because from what I've heard, Jimmy Brennan is rude to cashiers. Pass it on.
All right, Chinese whispers over here. There we go. All right, well, thank you so much for joining in, Johnny. As I said, we're going to be seeing you at the last home game, but I will be joining back on the podcast with you after the next home game, which is coming up. When is that coming up, Johnny?
Take a look at this. October 20th against Valor. And you know what? That's actually really exciting, because that's a winnable game. I think for us, that's a winnable game.
Tell you what, we play York away and then Edmonton away, and that's a winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
Then Forge away, and that's a losable game. If we score one goal against Forge this season, I will lose it.
I think in our history we're 5 losses and 12 goals conceded. Is that where we're at? 4 losses, 12 goals. I don't know, but it's not good. It's not good. But scoring a goal at Tim Hortons Field would, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was 1 last season, and every time we've played them this season. So that's 4 or 5. Who's keeping count at this point?
No.
So yes, absolutely. Join us back on Atletico, ATO, after the whistle, the Capital City Supporters Group podcast. You're going to join us there after the game on the 20th of October, as we're hopefully talking about the fact that Ottawa have just gone on this crazy 4-game winning streak. And then Johnny will be joining me in Ottawa 4 days later.
Hell yeah.
It's a 2 p.m. game as well, so we might even be able to do a relatively live reactions kind of podcast, maybe a second raw reactions without the analysis. We'll do that the day after, because that was terrible last time.
No, exactly. I think the two-parter is a good format, I think.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for bearing with our rambles and our rants. What I want to just sign this off with, if anyone affiliated with the club is listening, big love. We support you unconditionally. Rise above this. You guys are all, they're absolute champs. Every single one of you that I've had the absolute pleasure and honor of speaking with, just cracking human beings. And at the end of the day, regardless of anything else that's happening, just be there to back each other up and finish off this season in style.
Absolutely correct. Vamos, Atleti.